In 45 minutes, you'll feel a sudden shift. Archangel Michael says that's not mood. It's a spirit entering the room through an open door you forgot to close. You were never meant to feel this heaviness without reason. That cold tension in the center of your chest. Yes, that. It's not a mood swing. It's not exhaustion. And it's not weather. It's the entrance of something uninvited, yet allowed. You left something ajar. Not a door made of wood or steel, but a spiritual threshold, cracked open by memory, fear, or neglect. And now, what slipped through is watching from the corner, waiting. Archangel Michael says, this isn't your imagination. It's your alert. Some people won't even notice. They'll call it just energy. Others might cry for no reason or feel a sudden dizziness. You're chosen, so you'll feel it's stronger, sharper. The air will press heavier against your skin like a silent warning. Your thoughts will grow cluttered, not from overthinking, but because something foreign has started to whisper through them. Michael warns, your spirit is not alone in that room, and the door it came through was opened by your own hand. This is not to frighten you. It's to awaken you. Spirits respect what you allow. They trespass where you invite. In that fight you had yesterday, you said something you shouldn't. In that grudge you kept last week, you left the door swinging. You let us go. Later. Michael saw it slithering into your space at 3:13 a.m. That's when your guard dropped. That's when the crack widened. And in exactly 4 to 5 minutes, it will try to root in deeper. A.T.PM protected to get the blessing 3636. You don't need to panic, but you must prepare. This is a message for the spiritually aware and the called. Michael says, if you're reading this, you're one of them. You'll feel the shift not as pain, but as pressure. Not as noise, but as silence that screams in your bones. It is subtle, it is slick, but it is not harmless. So sit still. Be alert. Breathe deliberately. Watch your thoughts. Because the shift isn't in your mood. It's in your atmosphere. You have 27 minutes left on the unseen clock. Michael's sword is drawn, its edge reflecting your choices. He whispers that time is not counted in seconds but in doors. Each memory, each grudge, each careless phrase is a hinge. If it bends the wrong way, darkness slides through effortless. Close your eyes now and trace the moment the crack appeared. Was it the gossip you entertained, or the bitterness you fed? Name it, for unnamed cracks keep growing in haunted silence. The presence already leans against your thoughts like damp fog. It muffles courage, turns inspiration into static and doubt. You thought you were simply tired of the week's wait. But fatigue is the costume spirits wear when approaching warriors. They hide in normalcy, hoping you'll label them ordinary emotions. Michael says discernment is your shield, recognition your first strike. So inspect every feeling now, interrogate it with holy fire. If it recoils, you spotted the intruder trying to root. Imagine your room as a map of permissions and prohibitions. Every object carries residue of the energy it invited yesterday. That sentimental box under the bed, sealed with grief, still speaks. The song looping in your playlist, written in despair, echoes portals. Michael commands, consecrate the ground beneath your feet at once. Walk the perimeter and announce ownership with unwavering breath. The spirit lurking loves anonymity. Proclamation forces it to surface. Authority is sound. Raise yours before silence swallows conviction. Type I am shielded to get blessing 4747. Now, inhale deliberately, hold the air as if it were a vow. Exhale the invitation you never meant to mail to darkness. Breath is covenant. Let yours declare eviction over hidden trespassers. Michael hovers, wings extended like walls of sapphire lightning. He reminds you, angels act where humans decide, not before. Decision is the lock. Repentance is the key turning tide. Speak softly, yet with finality. I revoke every welcome I gave. Feel the room pulse, as if startled by your sudden authority. Walls will remember the words you sow in them tonight. Bless them. Mark doorposts with praise instead of complaint. The uninvited spirit recoils from gratitude like vampire from dawn. Michael says you cannot cast out what you secretly admire. So cleanse fascination first, detangle allure of wounded nostalgia. Place it on the altar of release, where fire refines intent. Watch memories transform from open windows to stained glass testimonies. What once leaked sorrow will soon refract indestructible hope. When the clock strikes 0, atmosphere tests the firmness of your seal. If you've tightened hinges with repentance, only peace will settle. If cracks remain, heaviness will crash like a falling ceiling. But remember, this is not doom, it's training in vigilance. Michael's presence is lesson, not mere rescue. He tutors warriors. You are being drafted into mastery over thresholds and shadows. Hold posture. Crown of discernment fits those who refuse slumber. 4 to 5 minutes but patrol continues for lifetime doors. Type I am rising to get blessing 5688. Do not underestimate sound. Hymns vibrate like cleansing thunder. Let music of liberation play, not melancholy masquerading as art. Set volume to truth. Let lyrics carve pillars of resolve. Spirits anchored in despair find melodies of joy unbearable. Michael's own name is a wargram. Speak it between every beat. When you proclaim who is like God, tremors chase imposters out. Fill corners with that chorus until dust dances like embers. Then silence returns, but receptive, not hostile, awaiting instruction. Instruction is simple. Sanctify the next 4 to 5 minutes forever. Mark the memory so future doors remember to swing closed. Craft a ritual of nightly audit. Check for open sentiments. End each day with forgiveness inventory. That is locksmith work. Forgiveness is hinge oil. Grudges rust until cracks gape. Michael applauds consistency more than impulsive bursts of zeal. Warriors are made in routine, not in rare dramatic moments. Therefore, build endurance. Victory is the habit of vigilant hearts. Now feel the air. Lighter by ounces, clear by degrees. That is confirmation. The trespasser is losing its camouflage. It has heard eviction orders echoed through your steadfast breath. But it will test locks again, just as shadows chase dusk. Remember this hour, recorded as covenant that fear failed. Michael seals the perimeter with flame that bows to your will. Stand in that glow and declare, I keep my gates holy. His proclamation closes part 2, but your patrol marches on. Type I stand guarded to get blessing 5991. You felt the shift already, didn't you? Subtle, like a muscle twitch beneath your skin. The atmosphere grew denser, not violently, but intentionally. You didn't imagine the flicker in the corner of your eye. It wasn't dust or a shadow. It was presence. This spirit didn't come to scream or roar. It came to nest, to settle where awareness has fallen asleep. And if Michael hadn't warned you through this message, you might have surrendered your ground unknowingly. This is how it begins. Not with chaos, but with silence. Not with panic, but with numbness. But now you're not numb. You're alert. And that is your greatest weapon. Archangel Michael stands at your side, not because you cried out in desperation, but because you rose in discernment. That matters more than panic ever could. Heaven doesn't just respond to pain, it responds to precision. The moment you began to examine the air around you, the music you let play, the thoughts you entertained, you declared your rank in the spirit. That declaration disturbed the unclean presence, because spirits of confusion, sorrow, fatigue, they don't fear loud rebukes. They fear consistency. They fear self-awareness. They fear someone who notices when a whisper doesn't belong to their soul. You see, spiritual entry points aren't always dramatic. Sometimes, they're as simple as resentment not fully buried. Sometimes, it's envy you masked as just concern, or the spiritual laziness that let you scroll past conviction last night. You left a door open when you said, "It's not that deep." But it is that deep. Every word, every thought, every act of agreement either opens or seals something. The spiritual realm is legal. It operates on permission. And this spirit, it came through because something you buried alive started clawing from beneath the floorboards of your mind. Type I am aligned to get the blessing 4744. So now you must become the doorkeeper again. Not the victim. Not the one trembling in fear. But the one who remembers. God gave you authority, not just protection. There's a difference. Protection is divine. Authority is a choice. Michael will defend, but only where you declare jurisdiction. Say it out loud now. I reclaim this space in the name of truth. Let your mouth vibrate against the walls. Let your sound override what silence has been feeding. The spirit that entered through mood, memory, or moment now hears your shift. Is listening to your choice. Atmospheres don't change because we wish them to. They change because we confront them. You are not simply feeling better. You are standing stronger. Michael says this is what the shift was meant to do, to expose what you tolerate. Intolerance is the real enemy of holiness. The longer you excuse something as normal, the deeper its roots become. That presence that's lingered for months, disguised as heaviness or distraction, now starts to surface. You'll notice it tonight, how certain thoughts try to return. How certain conversations suddenly make you uneasy. That's confirmation. You're driving it out. So let the room be your battlefield, but not one of noise. No, let it be one of clarity. You don't have to scream. You only need to know. Know who you are. Know what you allow. Know who has permission. Say again with confidence, nothing enters here without divine clearance. And watch how your nervous system responds to the decree. The body knows what the soul declares. You're not fighting from panic. You're reigning from presence. Type I am grounded to get blessing 5858. Tonight is not just spiritual maintenance. It is restoration. What left you open, grief, anger, heartbreak, it no longer gets to sit in the sacred corners of your life. Michael is not here to comfort you into peace. He is here to teach you to guard it. That's harder, but it's permanent. You'll begin to notice, even after tonight, how sensitive you become to what doesn't belong. A friend's words might suddenly feel intrusive. A show you love may now feel contaminated. This is not paranoia. This is discernment sharpening like a blade. Do not grieve what you must now close. The doors you forgot to seal may have allowed comfort, familiarity, but not growth. And anything that stunts your ascension must be renounced, even if it once felt safe. Michael says the higher you climb, the fewer open doors you can afford. Close them with finality. You won't descend just to feel understood. You won't entertain what once delayed you just to feel accepted. This is the spirit realm responding to your refusal to play small again. The spirit that entered unnoticed will not exit unnoticed. It will resist. You'll feel old temptations stir. Old wounds will try to speak again. But this time, your awareness is louder. That's what this message has done. It hasn't just warned you, it has matured you. And now that spirit knows it's unwelcome, your very posture is warfare. If this message is piercing your spirit and helping you step into divine truth, consider giving a super chat or super thanks today. Your support of $20 helps us continue creating powerful, prophetic messages like this one. We are grateful for every seed you sow. Also, if you'd like to support what we do, you can make a difference by donating via PayPal using the support here link in the description of this video. Every contribution helps us keep creating and sharing more with you. And be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. You'll receive regular prophetic guidance, exclusive content, and spiritual tools to keep you aligned with your divine path. Type I'm rising to get blessing 6886. There's a moment when the spirit realizes you've noticed it. That moment just passed. And now the atmosphere isn't simply heavy, it's reactive. That unclean presence was content while you were distracted, tired, numb. But the second your eyes sharpened in the spirit, it grew unsettled. You may have felt it as tension behind your eyes, a tightening in your chest, or a sudden need to breathe deeper. That's not just your body adjusting, that's your spirit recalibrating to authority. It's your soul signaling, I'm no longer asleep. Archangel Michael is closer now, not out of pity, but because you're engaging in spiritual jurisdiction. This isn't about begging anymore. This is about declaring. That's the shift Michael spoke of. It's not just a presence entering the room. It's you realizing that your silence was consent. It's you recognizing that passivity is participation. When you allowed unforgiveness to linger like background music, when you let depression lie in your bed as if it had a right to be there, you gave that spirit legal ground. But now, through your awareness and your voice, that legal ground is shaking. You feel it now, don't you? That tug in your thoughts to fall back asleep spiritually, to numb out, to deal with it later. It's the resistance of the unclean force trying to retain its excess. But the more you speak, internally or aloud, the more it loses grip. Michael says this is the hour of eviction. Not just for this spirit, but for every subtle force that has woven itself into your routine, your habits, your daily emotional cycles. This is not just about the open door from last night. This is about every spiritual window you forgot to lock over the last decade. Every psalm that became an accidental altar, every person whose voice still echoes in your space, every lie you let define your worth. They all become entry points. And the spirit that came through tonight didn't come alone. It came because the atmosphere had been weakened by repeated neglect. But now you are reclaiming it. And every time you speak with awareness, your voice becomes a key that slams doors shut behind it. Type I reclaim my atmosphere to get blessing 7171. Do not think for 1 second that your spiritual effort tonight is small. In the unseen realm, your words are thunder. Your posture is a war cry. The enemy isn't fighting back because you're weak. It's pressing harder because you're rising. Remember that. This isn't a mood. It's a manifestation. What you're facing isn't imagination. It's infiltration. You were spiritually compromised before because you were spiritually distracted. But now that you're present, you're powerful. Presence is power. And the spirit that entered through forgetfulness now trembles at the sound of your return to consciousness. Michael says, keep speaking. Don't let your mouth go mute now. Declare what is sacred. Speak what is sealed. Say things like, this room belongs to light. Say, my thoughts are closed to confusion. Say, my body is not a resting place for grief. With each line, the room shifts. You may not feel it like lightning. You may not shake or fall down. But the enemy hears every syllable like a siren of finality. You've walked into alignment, and alignment is louder than any prayer shouted without understanding. This is sacred noise, the kind that forces spirits to flee without drama. The kind that makes your space uninhabitable to what once nested in your silence. This is your turning point. From here on, you don't simply resist spirits, you starve them. You stop feeding them with negativity, indulgence, or compromise. That spirit entered because the atmosphere became familiar. Tonight, you are defamiliarizing your environment to every dark presence that once called it home. You are cleansing my declaration, and soon, your very presence will become a repellent. You'll walk into rooms, and unsettled people will flinch, not because you said anything, but because the atmosphere around you has changed. That's what authority does. It spills over. It leaks light. Type I walk in light to get blessing 8282. You are becoming dangerous to the very forces that once fed on your forgetfulness. Michael stands with flaming wings outstretched, nodding not just in approval, but in confirmation. You've shifted from passive recipient to active steward, and that is where real spiritual power begins. Not in performance, not in perfect prayers, but in posture. Your decision to confront what entered, quietly, secretly, without announcement, is what marks this moment as sacred. This is what makes heaven applaud, and this is what makes hell tremble. You've done more than confront the presence in your room. You've disrupted its rhythm. Spirits don't just seek shelter, they seek patterns. They hide inside repetition, slip through habits, and curl up inside emotional loops. That spirit that entered wasn't searching for a one-night stay. It was studying your routine. The way you wake up with dread. The way you scroll until your heart feels numb. The way you relive conversations that hurt you 5 years ago like they happened this morning. Those aren't just moods. They are open invitations. They are grooves that give darkness predictable entrances. Archangel Michael wants you to understand. Cleansing the room once is noble, but if the patterns remain, the door reopens. This is why tonight's shift isn't just about atmosphere, it's about architecture. The way your day is built must change. The way your thoughts spiral must be rewired. You can't cast out a spirit and then live a life that reinvites it. Michael stands behind you with authority, but that authority isn't a shield you hide behind. It's a sword you must wield. That sword is choice. That sword is awareness. That sword is the decision not to spiral again just because pain knocks. Do you feel that push in your chest right now? That's your spirit asking, will we really do it differently this time? You see, casting something out is momentary, but keeping it out is lifestyle. Michael says that's what most people miss. They cry for deliverance but return to dysfunction. They clean the room, but keep the objects that invited sorrow. They close the door but leave the window cracked in case they want one last visit. Don't do that. Don't glamorize what broke you. Don't eulogize the spirit that stole your joy. Burn the bridge, not with anger, but with finality. Your soul deserves to be inaccessible to what once drained it. And your atmosphere should be a fortress, not a hotel for ghosts of trauma. Type I am sealed and free to get blessing 9891. That feeling of anxiety creeping back as you read this. That's not coincidence. This the lingering presence testing your gate. It wants to know if you really mean it. If you'll actually shift the way you speak to yourself. If you will interrupt the loop instead of completing it. And here's the truth. You don't need to feel strong to make the right decision. You just need to choose. Power doesn't always feel like thunder. It often feels like quiet resistance. Like not texting back. Like turning off the phone. Like canceling the plan. Like laying still and breathing until the lie loses its grip. That's war. And Michael says the enemy knows you're finally at war for your own peace. This next phase is about maintenance. You've shaken the foundation, yes, but now you must reinforce the walls. That means you have to become vigilant about what enters. Not just physically, but digitally, emotionally, mentally. What conversations do you let play on repeat in your mind? What tones of voice linger longer than they should? What little compromises do you label as normal just to survive the day? These are not harmless. They are permissions. Michael is clear. What you tolerate emotionally becomes your spiritual scent. And spirits recognize scent more than words. Let your new scent be one of holiness, decisiveness, and clarity. Let it speak louder than your pain. This is why heaven keeps records, not to accuse you, but to empower you. The record of tonight is being written in fire. Not because of how loudly you prayed, but because of how deeply you decided. The moment you said, "No more," a line was drawn. The spirit that once slipped through cracks will remember this night like a closed courtroom. It will try to revisit, but it will find a different atmosphere. A different scent. A different you. Michael says that's all the evidence the heavens need to release new orders of protection on your behalf. Type "I protect my peace" to get blessing 7773. You've gone from cleanup to consecration. You're not just cleaning the space, you're declaring it sacred. You're building altars with words, setting guards with declarations, anointing doorways with presence. That's what happens when a warrior wakes up. The spirit that entered may try once more to linger. You'll feel it perhaps as doubt tomorrow morning or as sudden exhaustion at lunch. Don't panic. Smile instead. Because now you know what it is. And recognition is your gatekeeper. When you name it, you nullify it. When you refuse it, you revoke its access. And when you do it again and again, day after day, you become impenetrable. You don't need constant emotional highs to be spiritually strong. You just need to stay awake. This is your call into watchfulness, your initiation into disciplined discernment. And now, Michael watches as you stand, not as someone seeking rescue, but as someone commanding territory. The room is yours again. The atmosphere is aligned again. And your breath no longer hosts strangers. You've closed the door you forgot to check. And what tried to linger will now retreat, silenced by the warrior you've become. The room feels quiet now, doesn't it? But don't mistake that stillness for safety. In the spirit realm, silence isn't the absence of noise, it's the beginning of observation. The spirit you forced out hasn't vanished into oblivion. It lingers at the perimeter, watching for a lapse. Spirits retreat when they're rejected, but they wait for repetition. They track your next move. Archangel Michael says, this is the most critical window. Not the moment of warfare, but the hours that follow victory. Because spirits that are cast out rarely go far. They hover, hoping you will settle back into spiritual laziness, hoping you will grow tired of vigilance. Don't. Right now, your peace is holy ground under surveillance. Think of it like a gate finally shut. but the enemy's still testing the lock every few hours, pressing gently, hoping the latch slips. It will come in subtle ways. Your phone buzzes with a message you shouldn't answer. An old thought tries to sneak back in, dressed like nostalgia. Or suddenly, you feel an old wound itching in your memory, begging you to scratch it open again. That's not memory, it's bait. The spirit that entered your atmosphere once is now trying to return without announcement. And it knows that if it can't re-enter through emotion, it will try through distraction. So listen to Michael now. You are being watched, not by heaven alone, but by the thing you rejected. Your strength is not just in how you fought, it's in how you reinforce. This is where many fall. They win the initial battle, feel lighter, and then forget the weight of awareness. They assume the shift was permanent, not realizing that permanence is something you must establish. You don't get permanent results from temporary resolve. That's why tonight must become tomorrow's pattern. You must reinforce with routine, repetition, renewal. Wake up tomorrow and declare the same words you did tonight. Walk the perimeter of your heart again. Speak to your room again. Don't do it out of fear, do it out of recognition. You are no longer a passive soul floating in chaos. You are a gatekeeper. Type I will not fall asleep again to get blessing 6676. Michael says that heaven measures victory not by emotional release but by post-battle obedience. That means continuing to deny access even when you feel fine. Because that's when the return attempt comes, when your guard is low because your mood is high. That's the twist. The enemy doesn't just use sorrow. It uses relief too. You will feel a wave of joy, a sense of freedom, and then, right there, an old temptation will try to slide in. Not to torment but to bind. It will wear fangs. It'll wear familiarity. That's how this spirit works. It doesn't come through war. It comes through weariness, through loneliness, through forgetfulness. That's why you must build what Michael calls spiritual checkpoints. Every few hours, pause and ask, what's entered since I last noticed? This is how warriors live. Not in paranoia, but in precision. Make it your practice to sweep your atmosphere with awareness. Is that thought mine? Is this fatigue spiritual or physical? Is this conversation pulling me closer to the light or pushing me into shadow? Don't let things just happen to you anymore. You've entered a covenant of consciousness. You're not just casting out spirits, you're commanding space. You've tasted what a clean room feels like. You've breathed air free of unseen watchers. Don't forget that clarity. Write it down. Name this night. Because when the spirit tries to come back, and it will, you'll need to remember not how you felt, but what you decided. Feeling fades. Conviction endows. So write down your decision. Speak it aloud daily. I do not belong to my past patterns. I do not host what heaven has expelled. My body, my thoughts, my root, my life, they are not neutral ground. They are sealed. Type my decision is filed to get blessing 4745. You've reached the level where peace requires precision. And you're ready for it. Michael doesn't hover over those who choose comfort. He walks beside those who choose clarity. And tonight, you chose it. You saw what was in the room. You named it. You cast it out. And now you must guard what you gain. Don't wait for a shift to feel spiritual. You are the shift. Wherever you walk now, your awareness walks with you. The door you forgot to close is now sealed with light. But the enemy won't test the lock once. It will test it often. This is not to make you afraid. It's to make you firm. You are not a victim of passing energies. You are not a sponge for every mood, every word, every spiritual presence. You are the filter now, and what enters must answer to your authority. Michael stands by, sword still raised, but he watches not to protect you from everything, but to see if you protect what you reclaimed. The shift was a warning. Your awareness is the response. Your continued clarity. That's the victory. Now that you've reclaimed the atmosphere, it's time to treat it like sacred territory, not temporary relief. You must understand this. Peace is not self-sustaining in a world full of spiritual trespassers. It must be preserved with intentionality. What you cast out can return only if the space becomes hospitable again. And this is the greatest spiritual test after deliverance, what you choose to do with the freedom you've reclaimed. Will you make it a sanctuary? Or will you forget the vigilance that invited heaven's attention to begin with? Archangel Michael stands quietly now, observing, because his intervention is complete. The sword has done its work. Now it's your habits that must seal the victory. You've learned that the room's stillness after the shift is not the end of battle. It's the beginning of surveillance. But here is where your authority matures. Authority is not just the capacity to drive out, it's the ability to build in its place. You've expelled what did not belong. Now you must construct what will remain. The spirit that entered through the forgotten door counted on your neglect. It hoped for your emotional inconsistency. It assumed you would resist once and relapse soon after. But the spirit underestimated what happens when a person finally remembers who they are. That's what tonight was about. Spiritual remembrance. And what is remembered must now be rebuilt. The new atmosphere is delicate but not weak. Like fresh concrete, it needs time to cure, to harden, to settle in a way that cannot be disturbed. This is the season where you walk with deliberation. Every word matters. Every thought must be weighed. Every interaction must be filtered. Because the enemy does not retreat forever, it regroups. And the first place it tries to reclaim is the last place it lost. That means you. That means your space. That means your mind. Don't fear that. Be prepared for it. Michael says the wise don't just cast out darkness, they prepare a home for light. Type I build for light to get blessing 4949. This is where construction begins. Take inventory of what has filled your environment. What have you been feeding your spirit? What images fill your screen? What sounds surround your sleep? Every spiritual stronghold has a soundtrack, a scent, a visual atmosphere that supports it. That spirit didn't just slip in through mood, it was fed through repetition. So you must now interrupt those rhythms. Replace what you once allowed. You can't just silence what was destructive, you must install what is holy. Read aloud. Play music that reminds you of truth. Post declarations in your space. Train your room to respond to the light, so anything else feels foreign. Michael says, become predictable in righteousness. The enemy knew when you used to spiral, now let it learn that you rise on schedule. That you worship even when you don't feel like it. That you declare the atmosphere sacred every morning whether you're energized or exhausted. Ritual is powerful when it's rooted in divine consistency. And consistency is what makes spirits hesitate. They know how to handle a sudden emotional outburst of prayer. But they retreat in confusion when you show up again. And again. And again. That's how you keep the door sealed. This next stretch of time is your proving ground. You've already proven that you can fight. Now prove that you can build. Building requires patience. Sometimes the results will feel invisible. Some days the peace may feel less like joy and more like silence. But don't mistake lack of drama for lack of movement. Silence is where strength grows. Every quiet decision you make, every time you refuse to replay that old thought, every time you choose to speak peace aloud instead of spiraling in private, that's spiritual concrete setting deep into your soul. Type I guard what I've gained to get blessing 5151. You'll be tempted to drop your guard when life feels normal again. That's when the spirit will try to revisit. It may knock as a memory, as a random wave of emotion, as a subtle nudge to reopen old wounds. Do not entertain it, even for a second. You don't owe your past comfort. You owe your present truth. And truth says, this space is sealed. Truth says, I don't belong to what once broke me. Truth says, if peace is here, anything else must go. These words aren't performance. They are protection. Speak them as often as necessary. Michael reminds you of this. You are not meant to live in cycles. You are meant to walk in clarity. What was once a door of confusion has now been transformed into a wall of fire. And fire doesn't negotiate. It doesn't compromise. It purifies. That's what your atmosphere must become. A place so lined with light that even shadows feel unwelcome. You don't have to beg for that. You just have to maintain it. Light is drawn to discipline. Heaven expands wherever it sees honor. And by guarding your space, you are declaring to heaven daily, I will not waste what you gave me. If this message is piercing your spirit and helping you step into divine truth, consider giving a super chat or super thanks today. Your support of $20 helps us continue creating powerful, prophetic messages like this one. We are grateful for every seed you sow. Also, if you'd like to support what we do, you can make a difference by donating via PayPal using the support here link in the description of this video. Every contribution helps us keep creating and sharing more with you. And be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. You'll receive regular prophetic guidance, exclusive content, and spiritual tools to keep you aligned with your divine path. You've reached a turning point that few truly sustain, where vigilance becomes rhythm, and spiritual awareness is no longer a dramatic reaction, but a quiet discipline. The room is calm, the air still, but now your spirit is alert in ways it never was before. Not anxious, not paranoid, just precise. You understand that the shift that came wasn't just a one-time event. It was an awakening to an unseen cycle that had been repeating beneath your awareness. The presence, subtle yet invasive, fed off routines you forgot to question. But now the questions come automatically. What opened this? Why did I let that linger? What thought pattern did I entertain without challenge? These questions are the new locks on your doors. And the act of asking them is how you keep the next invasion from happening. Michael stands nearby, not as a sentinel anymore, but as a witness to your growth. He watches how you move now, carefully, deliberately. No longer reactive but preventive. And that's where your power matures. Most people wait until they're drowning in heaviness before crying out. But you've learned to test the water before stepping in. You've learned to check your atmosphere before you settle into your routine. And because of that, spirits that once waited at the edge of your emotions now pass by, unable to find access. Your consistency has confused them. Your discipline has frustrated them. They were counting on the door reopening out of habit. But habit no longer has the final word. Awareness does. This is where your lifestyle must reflect your revelation. What you realized in the heat of that spiritual battle must now become the blueprint of your days. And that means closing doors daily, doors that don't look like doors. the scroll that never ends on your screen, the conversation that sounds innocent but always leads you into gossip or insecurity, the playlist that once helped you feel something, but now only reactivates sorrow. You see, the room didn't get invaded because you invited a demon. It got invaded because you forgot to uninvite everything that made space for one. The unclean presence that entered wasn't special. It was simply opportunistic. It found a place that lacked attention. But now, attention is your armor, and repetition is your sword. Type I shut every unseen door to get blessing 6226. Michael says spiritual authority becomes undeniable when your choices echo even in silence. When no one is watching and you still choose truth. When no alarm is sounding but you still close the window. When the emotion creeps in and you say, "Not today." I know this tactic. That's not paranoia. That's preparation. The enemy will never announce its next entrance. It waits for patterns. But now your pattern is strength. Your pattern is observation. Your pattern is interruption. And interruption is one of the holiest acts of warfare. Every time you stop the loop before it completes, you disarm what once held dominion over your thoughts. You've reached the place where ownership must be redefined. This room you stand in, this home you dwell in, is not just shelter. It is a sanctuary. You don't live in it, you preside over it. And the same goes for your body, for your mind, for your spirit. Ownership isn't having something, it's governing it. And governance takes discipline. Not every open door feels spiritual. Some feel soothing. Some feel justified. But Michael reminds you, just because something feels comforting doesn't mean it's not contaminating. Don't be seduced by soft invasions. They come to numb your guard. They come to blend in. They don't break the door. They wait until you leave it open. This is why the shift began as a mood. Because that's where the spirit thought it could hide. In sadness. In fatigue. In distraction. But now you know better. A shift in mood must always be met with a shift in posture. You can't afford to say, "I'm just having a bad day," without interrogating it. Because that's exactly how the spirit got in last time when questioned access. So now, every emotional wave must be inspected. Every heaviness must be held up to the light. And every change in atmosphere must be addressed. Not with fear, but with clarity. The clarity that says, "I know what this is, and I know what I allow." I take ownership of my space to get blessing 7373. There's a reason you were chosen to receive this message. Not everyone is handed this level of insight. But you were. Because heaven saw your pattern of survival and knew it was time to call you into stewardship. You're no longer someone who simply endures spiritual oppression until it breaks. You are someone who prevents it from settling in the first place. And that kind of authority requires not just power, but maturity. Now, you understand why Michael came with such urgency. He didn't arrive because you were in danger. You arrived because you were being trained. You don't just guard your atmosphere. You guard the revelation that made it clean. The words you heard tonight, the warnings, the commands, the declarations, they must become part of your spiritual routine. Don't treat this as a one-time moment. Treat it as the day your gates were fortified. From now on, your room responds to your discipline. Your mind respects your voice. And your spirit doesn't wait for rescue. It maintains the rescue that already arrived. The greatest sign of spiritual maturity is not just in what you can resist, but in what you carry. And now, because you stayed consistent beyond the battle, You've started to shift the atmosphere you bring into every space. You're no longer just the one guarding your room. You're the one influencing others without even opening your mouth. Michael says this is the reward of discipline. When your atmosphere becomes so guarded, so saturated in clarity, that it becomes offensive to darkness before you even arrive. That means the room begins to respond to your presence, not the other way around. That means old patterns start to break, not just in you, but around you. Because spirits remember energy, and they flee from the scent of someone who's sealed. This is what happens when you truly close the door daily. You don't just shut out a presence. You evict its influence across every space you enter. And now, places where confusion once followed you begin to feel unsettled by you instead. That's not pride. That's transformation. You have become a carrier of divine clarity. People might say you feel different, or I don't know why, but when you're around, things feel more peaceful. They are not imagining that. They are experiencing your atmosphere, one that's no longer tangled in unseen threads of spiritual disorder. You see, most people wait until they feel spiritual to behave spiritually. But now you understand that spiritual authority is built in the shadows of your daily decisions. Michael says your consistency has started echoing in places your voice hasn't even reached yet. That's how spiritual leadership works. You didn't pray for influence, but your obedience created it. The room you now keep sealed speaks louder than any title ever could. And it all started when you felt that shift, when you noticed the heaviness wasn't yours, when you closed the door you didn't know was open. A single moment of awareness has now become a ripple in the spirit, stretching beyond your home, beyond your day, beyond your personal battle. You're not just delivered, you're chameleon. Type I carry divine clarity to get blessing 8181. But with this spiritual commission comes responsibility. Don't romanticize the moment. Reverence it. Because when your atmosphere becomes a threat to darkness, you don't just get tempted, you get tested. Soul tests. Familiar ones. That spirit that lost its seat in your room may try to visit through someone else's tone, through a conversation you didn't expect, through a scenario designed to crack your rhythm just slightly. The point is never to destroy you in one blow. It's to reintroduce chaos so quietly that you forget what stillness feels like. That's the tactic now. Re-entry through familiarity. And the only defense is consistency. So you must protect your stillness like a holy object. You must defend your peace like a birthright. Don't dismiss interruptions that feel small. They are calculated. They are attempts to reopen what was sealed. Remember what you've already seen. You felt it shift before, and now you must be able to say, without hesitation, I know this pattern. I see this setup. I will not participate. Michael says the strength of your future depends on your memory of past doors. What you forget, you repeat. But what you remember, you redeem. And every time you stand firm, that spirit loses its argument against you in the courts of heaven. This is not a time to relax your grip. This is a time to deepen your roots. Let your rituals mature. Let your habits solidify. Don't just speak declarations. Live them. Write them down. Revisit them. Don't allow your room to revert to how it felt before the shift. Keep it consecrated. Keep it alert. Walk through it daily and bless it, not as a reaction, but as a ritual. Your room has become a spiritual gate, and gates, once strengthened, must be guarded. There's no neutral ground anymore. Every place is either filled or vulnerable. Keep it filled. Type I fill my space with power to get blessing 9992. Michael stands ready not just to defend, but to confirm. He doesn't only show up for war, he shows up for wisdom. And wisdom is what you're walking in now. You're not waiting for signs to believe. You're not waiting for chaos to remember truth. You've integrated your victory into your daily movement. You've made holiness habitual. And that's what makes you powerful. Not a single prayer, not a single night, but the unseen, repeated, quiet choices you make to remain clean. So now, when the door is tested again, and it will be, your response won't be panic. It will be posture. You'll recognize the temperature shift. You'll notice the change in tone. And you'll simply say, not here. Not again. That's authority. That's guardianship. That's the legacy of someone who doesn't just fight darkness. They prepare against it. This is who you've become. The atmosphere no longer controls you. You command it. By now, you've realized something deeper. The atmosphere doesn't lie. It holds memory. It carries residue. It reflects what has been invited in and what has been forced out. And spirits, those unseen forces that linger in silence, cannot pretend in the presence of truth. They can mimic comfort, wear the face of nostalgia, speak in the tone of self-pity or harmless distractions, but they cannot survive where clarity stands unmoved. That is what your space has become, a sanctuary where lies suffocate. And it all began when you dared to notice the shift. When you stopped calling your heaviness a bad day and instead asked, what just entered my atmosphere? That question changed everything. What you're walking in now isn't just freedom. It's discernment sharpened to the edge of a blade. You don't just feel when something is off. You identify it. You don't just pray reactive prayers. You prevent access before the spirit even dares to knock. That is the fruit of daily guardianship. You no longer rely on external signals. You become a radar, a vessel so tuned to the rhythm of heaven that anything discordant grates against your spirit the moment it appears. And that's why Michael has remained so close, not as a rescuer, but as a witness to your growth. You've passed the threshold of dependence. You are now in the realm of authority. But authority must be continually aligned. You cannot allow pride or fatigue to slow your sensitivity. You must stay honest with yourself. Because while the atmosphere doesn't lie, the human heart sometimes tries to. It will say, it's not that deep, or I'm probably overthinking, or maybe it's just me. But every time you excuse what feels wrong, you give the spirit watching from the threshold a little more hope. Don't let it hope. Don't give darkness even a sliver of permission to imagine it has a chance. You've already closed that door, sealed it with discernment, and reinforced it with declarations. Don't break your own agreement with heaven out of convenience. Type I trust my discernment to get blessing 8882. Michael reminds you that not all spirits seek to overwhelm, they seek to blend. They want to stay just low enough, just soft enough, just familiar enough to be tolerated. These are the ones you must be most wary of. The ones that sound like your own inner voice. The ones that echo in your mind with words like you will never get free, or nothing's changed, or you're not really strong enough. These are not passing thoughts. They are invited whispers, hoping you'll confuse them for truth. But now you know the difference. Now you feel it immediately. Because truth brings clarity, even when it convicts. Lies always leave residue, confusion, fatigue, dread, disconnection. That is your sign. You're not who you were before that shift. Your space is not what it was before you confronted that presence. Everything has changed because you chose to no longer live unaware. And because of that decision, Spirits that once roamed freely through your emotional atmosphere now panic when your name is spoken. They don't just fear your words, they fear your awareness. You've become too sharp, too awake, too governed by clarity. That's why attacks feel more subtle now. It's not that you're weaker. It's that the enemy must try harder to find even a sliver of access. So this is where the real discipline continues, in the still moments, when everything feels fine, when nothing seems off, when the mood is steady. That is not the moment to relax your guard. That is the moment to reaffirm what you've already sealed. Walk through your room and say, "This space is still holy." Look at your phone and whisper, "I control what enters my spirit." Close your eyes before sleep and declare, "Nothing will trespass while I rest." These small acts, done daily, become declarations in the spirit that form a wall no darkness can pass through. Atmosphere responds to intention, not emotion. If this message is piercing your spirit and helping you step into divine truth, consider giving a super chat or super thanks today. Your support of $20 helps us continue creating powerful, prophetic messages like this one. We are grateful for every seed you sow. Also, if you'd like to support what we do, you can make a difference by donating via PayPal using the support here link in the description of this video. Every contribution helps us keep creating and sharing more with you. And be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. You'll receive regular prophetic guidance, exclusive content, and spiritual tools to keep you aligned with your divine path. Type "I remain fortified" to get blessing 6066. Let others chase dramatic encounters. You've chosen something stronger, continual presence, continual clarity, continual guardianship. You no longer wait to be stirred, you wake up ready. And because of that, heaven now entrusts you with more. You will notice more in others. You'll walk into rooms and feel where the air is off. You'll hear people speak and sense what's hidden behind their tone. That's not judgment, it's spiritual perception. Use it with humility. Use it with precision. Because what you now carry must be stewarded with integrity. You are not just a clean vessel, you're a beacon. And light must be kept lit. Michael watches not with concern, but with certainty. He knows you're becoming the kind of warrior who no longer waits for signs to act. You move because you know. You stand because you sense. You speak because your atmosphere demands it. And soon, you'll teach others to do the same. Not with lectures, but by example. Because atmosphere doesn't lie, and spirits can't pretend when someone truly aligned steps into the room. The room you once viewed as a simple place of rest is now understood as a gate, an entry point not only for your emotions, but for divine instructions and unseen currents that shape your life. It was never just about the atmosphere within the walls. Michael wants you to see that what you guard now is sacred access. It's the space where decisions are born, where your clarity takes root, where whispers from heaven land. And because this gate has been cleaned, consecrated, and sealed, it has become a landing strip for glory, but also a target for distractions masked as routine. That's why the attacks lately haven't been loud. They've been quietly timed. Subtle delays. A strange heaviness right before you sit down to focus. A fog that rolls in around the time you usually pray. These aren't coincidences. They are tactics. The spirit you cast out has learned that screaming won't work anymore, so it's testing you with silence. And that's why Michael keeps reminding you, the fight was never just for relief. It was for awareness. You didn't win a battle just to feel better. You won a battle so you could keep standing when no one else around you knows why the atmosphere feels strange. You're the one who now senses what others excuse. You pick up on shifts others dismiss. And that's because your gatekeeping role isn't just personal. It's intercessory. You've been entrusted with a sensitivity that must remain active, not occasional. The enemy fears that. It fears the believer who doesn't need to be told something's wrong because they already know. The one who prays before the problem, not just after. That's who you're becoming. But with this heightened awareness comes a new kind of resistance. It's not just about pushing spirits out of your space. It's about keeping the divine flow in. The enemy can't stop what God sends, so it tries to clog your gate with debris. Emotional clutter, overthinking, sudden busyness. You've probably noticed that since you took back control of your room, interruptions have increased. Unnecessary deaths, invitations that seem harmless, thoughts you haven't had in months, trying to resurface. All of it is noise. And noise, Michael says, is the enemy's most successful modern tactic. Not darkness, not terror, just noise. Because if the enemy can't steal your authority, it'll try to drown it out. I protect my gate to get blessing 7,177. So now, you must become not just a keeper of peace, but a steward of silence. Not every silence is empty. Some silences are sacred. Some are portals for instruction. You can't afford to live in constant noise and expect clear direction. That's why this next layer of your journey is about curation. You're not just guarding what enters, you're choosing what stays. You're learning that your room, your phone, your thoughts, these are altars. And altars must be pure if fire is going to fall. You've already cleansed the room. Now curate it. Design your environment to reflect what you want heaven to deposit. Don't just remove clutter, replace it with intentional presence. Michael says even your time is part of your gatekeeping. How you spend the quiet hours determines what spiritual cargo can land in your space. That means waking up and immediately reaching for distraction must stop. You can't open the day with random noise and expect targeted revelation. The first few moments you wake are sensitive. They're like freshly tilled soil. Whatever you plant there grows fast. So speak early. Pray early. Declare early. Saturate your space before the enemy even remembers where you live. Because when light fills the gate before darkness shows up, there's no contest. It has nowhere to settle. You might be wondering how to sustain this level of intentionality without burning out. But the truth is, this doesn't take more energy. It just takes better placement of it. You already spend time thinking, scrolling, reacting. And now, you're just redirecting that same energy toward reinforcement. Toward sealing what you already reclaimed. Think of your gate as needing daily oil. Not because it's weak, but because you honor it. The oil is your prayer, your wisdom, your awareness. Every time you pause to say, "This moment is holy," you pour that oil. Every time you catch yourself about to repeat an old pattern and instead speak truth, you pour that oil. And soon, the hinge of your gate becomes unbreakable. Type I keep the oil flowing to get blessing 4,944. You've come too far to revert now. This space, this gate, it's yours by divine appointment. What you feel, what you sense, what you know deep inside that others shrug off, it's not your imagination. It's intercession. It's calling. It's training. Your room was a classroom. The shift was the curriculum. And now you are walking in the assignment. Protect what allows the divine to enter freely. Let no distraction sit longer than a few seconds. Let no emotion linger unexamined. Let no voice be louder than the whisper of God in your atmosphere. You're not just guarding a room. You're not just maintaining peace. You're keeping a gate clear for divine visitation. And every time you take that seriously, heaven expands your reach. That's why the resistance feels heavier some days. It's not that you're failing. It's that your gate has become strategic territory. And strategic territory is always contested. But Michael has seen your diligence, and heaven has begun to mark your space as a zone of influence. Not because of perfection, but because of consistency. There's a reason you felt the resistance grow sharper, more personal, more targeted. It's not because something is wrong, it's because something is working. Your room, once just a quiet place to sleep, has now become a spiritual fortress, and your spirit has become a tower of protection. You didn't plan for this. You didn't know that confronting the shift at night would unlock this kind of vigilance. But heaven did. And now, so does the enemy. That's why it's not launching random attacks anymore. Now it's studying. Now it's strategizing. Because the territory you've secured is no longer just about you. It's radiating. Every time you choose clarity, someone near you is freed from confusion. Every time you protect your gate, someone connected to you gains courage to protect theirs. That's what makes your space strategic. And that's why the pressure hasn't lifted. It's shifted. It's evolved. Michael says when territory becomes strategic, attacks become surgical. They won't be obvious anymore. They won't always come in the form of depression or anxiety or sudden fear. They'll come in the form of distraction that looks like opportunity, busyness that feels like success, conversations that drain instead of build, even if they come from familiar lips. You'll begin to notice how the things that once felt normal now feel intrusive. That's not hypersensitivity. That's holy discernment. The presence you've cultivated in your space has made anything unclean stand out like poison in water. You no longer have the option to ignore the small things. Because small things, left unchecked, reopen sealed gates. The temptation now is to believe that if the room is clean, the war is over. But Michael warns, cleanliness without vigilance creates vulnerability. A gate must be guarded, not just sealed once. That means you can't depend on what you did yesterday. Yesterday's declarations created a shield for yesterday's attacks. But today, the tactics have changed. Not because the spirit is stronger, but because you are. You're more aligned now, more aware. And that makes you a threat to what once lingered without consequence. And threats must be neutralized. That's why you're being pushed in areas you thought were secure. The enemy is testing for new entry points, and you must answer each test with remembrance. Type I respond with remembrance to get blessing 6633. Remember the moment you felt that sudden weight drop into the room. The confusion, the exhaustion, the distraction, and then clarity. The moment you paused and said, something is off. That moment awakened this entire process. That moment put hell on notice that you would no longer be passive about your spiritual perimeter. And now, every spirit that once had casual access to your mind, your emotions, your space, they've been displaced. But displacement creates desperation. What you cast out is still circling. Not because it has power, but because it lost a resting place. You must make sure it never finds one again. This is why consistency is now your greatest form of warfare. Not performance. Not shouting louder. Just refusing to compromise your clarity. Refusing to entertain what feels familiar but is rooted in old patterns. That friend who always stirs anxiety. a habit that seems harmless but always steals your focus, that playlist that makes you feel seen but reopens wounds. You must see these things for what they are: agents of re-entry. The enemy doesn't need a legion when it has a routine. Don't give it one. Every time you break the pattern, you deny it permission to return. Every time you speak truth over silence, you fill the space before it can be filled by something else. The maturity you're walking in now requires daily death to convenience. It's easier to let things slide. You say it's not that serious. But you already saw what happens when you forget the door is open. You already lived through the shift. You already felt the presence trying to blend in. And once you've seen it, once you've confronted it, you can't unsee it. That's not a burden. It's a mantle. You were awakened so others could see, so that your space could remain pure, so that your life could become a landing place for divine presence, not just protection. Type I will not forget to get blessing 5454. Michael is closer than ever, not because you are in danger, but because you are in demand. Your obedience has drawn spiritual attention, not just from heaven, but from the realm of resistance. And every time you choose alignment, you reinforce your spiritual territory. You make it harder for darkness to guess your patterns. You make it impossible for old cycles to continue. You're not just holding ground, you're expanding it. Every decision you make now, every declaration you whisper into your space, every moment you choose silence over noise, heaven records it as territory taken, and hell records it as access denied. You didn't just clean your room. You changed its spiritual address. You made it a place where heaven knows it can dwell, and where anything unholy knows it cannot hide. Keep that alignment. You are that gate. And remember, when the resistance gets more strategic, it's because your victory has become more significant. You may not see the ripple, but it's happening. Every time you seal the atmosphere in your room with awareness instead of apathy, your obedience echoes far beyond the walls. The spirit you evicted wasn't just attached to your space. It was monitoring the strength of your pattern. When it realized you weren't going back to sleep spiritually, it didn't just retreat. It reported. Because obedience, especially consistent obedience, makes noise in the unseen realm. And when one person stands with precision, every force that profited from their previous disorder begins to lose ground elsewhere. That's what's really happening. The resistance you feel now isn't just about your peace, it's about your reach. Archangel Michael wants you to understand that your clean gate is becoming a pattern breaker. Your choices are interrupting cycles in bloodlines, cycles in regions, cycles in households that once agreed with confusion and chaos without question. That's why you felt sudden warfare in places you thought were stable. It's not regression. It's revelation. What you've cleansed in your private space is now shining light into rooms you haven't even walked into yet. And spirits don't just fear your prayers. They fear your pattern. Because prayers are powerful, but they must be followed by lifestyle. And your lifestyle is now anointed. This is where the enemy switches strategies. It won't come at you with obvious attacks. It will try to diminish your awareness by making your breakthrough feel normal, mundane, unremarkable. You'll feel temptation to say, was it really that serious? Or maybe I was just overthinking. But that's not humility. That's spiritual gaslighting. The spirit you evicted wants you to question the authority that drove it out. Because if you doubt your discernment, you'll leave the door unlocked again out of habit. Don't do it. Don't downplay what heaven celebrated. Michael saw the moment your mind cleared. He saw the moment the pressure lifted. He watched your posture change. And he wants you to remember, your shift was real. Your authority is legitimate, and your alignment is causing disruption in places you cannot yet see. Type my alignment echoes to get blessing 5959. That's why some of your relationships suddenly feel strained. Not because they're evil, but because your alignment exposes what others are still ignoring. You're not judging them. You're just no longer tolerating what you once shared. The spirit that was evicted from your space may still live comfortably in theirs, and now, the difference is palpable. You might feel awkward when you visit certain homes, heavy after certain phone calls, unsettled after conversations you used to enjoy. That's not conflict, it's contrast. You're beginning to carry a spiritual climate that doesn't mix well with what you used to normalize. Michael says, don't apologize for that contrast. Don't tone down your clarity to blend into atmospheres you've already outgrown. That spirit is looking for another door. Don't be the one who reopens it through misplaced loyalty. You're not being difficult. You're being delivered. And the ones who are truly aligned with your next season will feel peace when you walk into a room, not agitation. This is a new level of spiritual maturity, learning to walk in peace even when you disrupt what's unclean. Your presence isn't always supposed to be comfortable. Sometimes it's supposed to convict. That doesn't mean you speak with arrogance. It means you carry presence like fire, not loud, not forceful, but impossible to ignore. You don't have to say, I'm changed. People will feel it. Spirits will know it. And those trying to re-enter will sense the firm boundaries even in your silence. That's the kind of power that can't be faked. And it's only given to those who have walked through confrontation with truth and stayed aligned long after the sensation faded. That's you. The gate you guard is now lit from the inside. What once roamed freely is now unable to find purchase in your atmosphere. And because of that, you've become a territorial shift in the earth. Type I don't shrink to fit the old atmosphere to get blessing 8288. You weren't just called to clean a room. You were called to carry a blueprint. Your obedience is becoming a template others will follow. That's why you've been under pressure lately. It's not just about you. Your discipline is unlocking something for people who haven't yet found language for their discomfort. Your alignment is giving vocabulary to what others are still numbing. They'll come to you soon, not for advice, but for atmosphere. And when they do, you'll recognize the moment. Not because you're special, but because you're sealed. And sealed spaces naturally draw on sealed souls. Michael stands over your threshold now, not to fight, but to record. Your consistency has become a testimony, one that will be referenced when others cry out and don't understand why their prayers feel delayed. Heaven will say, follow their pattern, because you didn't just feel a shift, you aligned your life with it. And now, the ripple is moving outward. This journey didn't begin with a shout. It began with a feeling, a pressure, a shift in the air you couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore. You thought it was mood, fatigue, distraction. But now you know better. It was a spirit, an unseen visitor creeping into your space through a door you didn't realize you had left cracked open. But instead of brushing it off, you paid attention. You stood still. You asked the right questions. And in doing so, you activated a spiritual reckoning that heaven had been waiting for. That's what made this different. You didn't just want relief. You pursued understanding. You didn't just cast the presence out. You made sure it stayed out. You didn't settle for momentary peace. You fought for atmosphere. And that atmosphere has now become your stronghold, your resting place, your altar. It carries your decisions. It echoes your declarations, and it speaks to anything unclean with the power of your vigilance. Because the enemy didn't just fear the night you confronted it, it fears the days after, when you refuse to forget the war. You sealed the room. You've protected the gate. But most importantly, you've matured into someone who can keep what you reclaimed. And that's what pleases heaven the most. Not just that you recognize the shift, but that you remain changed long after the moment passed. That's the mark of those God entrusts with more. And you will see more. You will sense more. You will carry more. Not because you begged, but because you aligned. The door is closed. The spirit is gone. And your authority is intact. If this message is piercing your spirit and helping you step into divine truth, consider giving a super chat or super thanks today. Your support of $20 helps us continue creating powerful, prophetic messages like this one. We are grateful for every seed you sow. Also, if you'd like to support what we do, you can make a difference by donating via PayPal using the support here link in the description of this video. Every contribution helps us keep creating and sharing more with you. And be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. You'll receive regular prophetic guidance, exclusive content, and spiritual tools to keep you aligned with your divine path. I am chosen and sealed to get blessing 9999.